I always thought my stepmom, Linda, couldn't stand me. Ever since she married my dad, it felt like she went out of her way to make me feel like an outsider in my own home. She wasn't mean outright, no yelling, no cruel words, but the way she looked at me, the way she avoided real conversations, the way she barely acknowledged me at dinner, it was like I was invisible. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. My dad, Mark, was happy, and that was the important thing, right? But deep down, it stung. I missed my mum, who had passed away when I was 10, and Linda's coldness only made the ache worse. No matter what I did, she kept her distance, and after a while I stopped trying. Then, one evening, everything changed. It started as a normal night. I was in my room, scrolling through my phone, when I heard a knock at the door. Light, hesitant. That alone was strange. Linda never came to my room, ever. When I opened the door, she stood there, shifting nervously. Her usual composed expression was gone. She looked vulnerable. I'd never seen her like that before. "Can I talk to you for a second, Ethan?" she asked, her voice softer than I'd ever heard it. I hesitated. Uh, sure." She stepped inside, wringing her hands. My mind raced. Was I in trouble? Did something happen? Then she said something that turned my world upside down. "I need to tell you the truth about something. Something I should have told you a long time ago." Her voice cracked, and for the first time in years, I saw tears in her eyes. What could she possibly have to say? And why did it feel like everything I thought I knew about her was about to change forever? Linda took a shaky breath, her hands gripping the edge of my desk like she needed something to hold on to. The room felt smaller, like the walls were closing in, and I could hear my own heartbeat pounding in my ears. "What are you talking about?" I asked cautiously. She glanced at the door, as if making sure we were alone, then turned back to me. "Ethan, I know you think I've never cared about you, and I don't blame you." Her voice was thick with emotion, and I swore I saw guilt in her eyes. But that's not the truth. I folded my arms. "Then what is?" She hesitated, struggling to find the words. "When I married your dad, I thought keeping my distance was the right thing to do. I didn't want to overstep. I told myself it was for your sake, that you needed space to grieve your mum." She let out a bitter laugh. "But the truth is, I was scared." I blinked. "Scared? Of what?" Linda swallowed hard, and for a moment I thought she might back out of whatever she was about to say. But then she met my eyes. "Scared that if I let myself care about you, it would hurt too much if I lost you." That threw me. Lose me? Where was this coming from? "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "Why would you lose me?" She looked down, her fingers tightening around each other. "Because I lost someone before." Silence stretched between us, heavy and unspoken. Finally she whispered, "Ethan, before I met your dad, I had a son." The room seemed to tilt. My breath caught in my throat. A son? She had a son? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My mind raced with questions. Where was he now? Why had she never mentioned him? And why did I get the sinking feeling that whatever she was about to tell me next would change everything? I felt like the floor had disappeared beneath me. A son. Linda had a son. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. In all the years she had been married to my dad, she had never once mentioned him. Not even in passing. Why? My voice felt foreign when I finally spoke. "What? What happened to him?" Linda exhaled sharply, like she had been bracing for that question. "His name was Jacob," she said softly, her gaze distant. "He was a few years older than you. Smart, kind, had the biggest heart." She swallowed hard, then gave a sad smile. "But life doesn't always care about that." Something in her voice made my stomach tighten. "He's gone, isn't he?" She nodded slowly. "He died when he was 16. The weight of her words settled in the room like a thick fog. I had no idea what to say. What could I say? Linda took a shaky breath. I wasn't just scared of losing you, Ethan. I was terrified. After Jacob, I didn't think I could survive that kind of pain again, so I convinced myself that keeping my distance was safer, that if I didn't get too close to you, it wouldn't hurt as much if— Her voice broke. If something happened. A lump formed in my throat. I had spent years believing she didn't care about me, that she had no interest in being a part of my life. But now I realized the truth was so much more complicated. And yet, another question burned inside me. Why are you telling me this now? Linda hesitated, her eyes searching mine. Because I can't keep pretending I don't care about you, and because— She took another deep breath, like she was about to drop another bombshell. There's something I need to ask you, and after I do, things may never be the same between us. My chest tightened. What is it? She hesitated, her fingers twisting together. Then, finally, she spoke. I need your help with something, and it has to do with Jacob. My pulse quickened. The way Linda said Jacob's name, it was filled with something deeper than grief. There was weight behind it, something unfinished. I shifted uneasily. What do you mean? What kind of help? She hesitated, glancing at the door again as if making sure no one else could hear. Then she turned back to me, her voice barely above a whisper. There's something I've been keeping for years, something I never had the courage to face. She paused, her hands trembling. Jacob didn't just die, Ethan. He was taken from me. A chill ran down my spine. Taken? My mouth was dry. And you think I can help? Linda gave me a look I couldn't quite read, something between desperation and determination. Jacob had a best friend, someone he trusted more than anyone. His name was Ryan. After the accident, Ryan disappeared. No one could find him. I frowned. You think he knows something? I don't think, Ethan. I know he does. She swallowed hard. And I just found out where he is. The air in the room seemed to thicken. My chest tightened. This wasn't just some old grief she was digging up. This was something bigger, something dangerous. I shook my head, my heart hammering. Linda, this sounds insane. What if you're wrong? What if you're just looking for something that isn't there? She stepped closer, gripping my arm. Then I'll finally have peace. But if I'm right, I can't do this alone. My mind swirled with everything she had told me. I'd spent years believing my stepmom didn't care about me. Now she was asking me to help her uncover the truth about a son I never knew existed. And something told me that once I stepped into this, there would be no turning back. A heavy silence filled the room. My mind was spinning, but one thought stood out among the chaos. This was bigger than I had imagined. Linda had spent years burying this pain, convincing herself that Jacob's death was an accident. But now she was pulling me into something that felt way beyond either of us. Still, I couldn't ignore the way her hands shook, the way her eyes pleaded with me. She wasn't just asking for help, she was asking me to believe her. I exhaled slowly. Where is Ryan now? Linda hesitated, then reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. She handed it to me. I unfolded it carefully, my eyes scanning the words. An address. He resurfaced a few weeks ago, she said. Someone I know tracked him down. He's been living off the grid, moving from place to place, but now— She swallowed. Now he's in town. A strange unease settled in my chest. If he's been hiding all these years, why now? Why would he suddenly come back? Linda's lips pressed together. I don't know, but I can't ignore it. She hesitated before adding, and there's something else. I tensed. What? She reached for her phone, tapping the screen a few times before turning it toward me. A blurry image appeared, a grainy security camera still. My breath caught. It was a man, hood up, walking past a gas station. The timestamp was just 2 days ago. That's Ryan, she said. And this? She zoomed in on the background, pointing to a dark sedan parked behind him. This car, It was at Jacob's funeral. A shiver ran down my spine. "What are you saying?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Linda's expression darkened. "I think someone's been watching him, and if I'm right, that means someone doesn't want the truth about Jacob to come out." For the first time, fear gripped me. This wasn't just about uncovering the past anymore. This was about staying alive long enough to do it. A cold dread settled over me as Linda's words sank in. If someone was watching Ryan, then we weren't the only ones searching for answers, and that meant we weren't safe. Still, I knew there was no turning back. That night, Linda and I drove to the address she had given me. The place was an old, run-down motel on the edge of town, the neon sign flickering like it was on its last breath. As we pulled into the lot, I scanned the rows of parked cars, my pulse hammering. Was the black sedan here? Was someone waiting for us? Linda gripped the steering wheel. "Stay close to me." We walked up to the motel door, number 203, and Linda knocked. Silence, then slow, shuffling footsteps. The door cracked open and a pair of wary eyes met ours. Ryan. His face was gaunt, his hair unkempt, like he had been running for a long time. His gaze darted between us, then past us, checking the parking lot before he finally spoke. "You shouldn't be here." Linda's voice was firm. "We need to talk about Jacob." Ryan flinched at the name but stepped aside, letting us in. The room was dimly lit, cluttered with crumpled takeout containers and scattered papers. It smelled of stale coffee and desperation. "I don't have much time," he muttered, pacing. "They know I'm here." Linda's breath hitched. "Who?" Ryan hesitated, then finally looked at her. "The people who killed Jacob." A chill ran through me. Ryan grabbed a folder from the table and shoved it into Linda's hands. "Jacob found something he wasn't supposed to. He told me right before he died. I never said anything because I knew they'd come for me too." Linda opened the folder, her hands trembling. Her face paled. "What is it?" I asked, my stomach twisting. She turned to me, her eyes wide with horror. "Ethan, this isn't just about Jacob." She handed me a photograph, and when I saw the person in the picture, my blood ran cold. It was my father. My throat went dry as I stared at the photograph. There, standing next to Jacob, was my father. My mind raced, trying to make sense of it. This doesn't mean anything," I stammered. "Just because he's in a picture with Jacob doesn't mean—" Ryan cut me off. "Look at the date." I did. It was taken the day before Jacob died. Linda's hands clenched around the folder. Mark never mentioned knowing Jacob. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but I could hear the betrayal in it. "Why would he keep this from me?" Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "Because he was there that night." The room spun. "No," I said, shaking my head. "My dad wouldn't— he couldn't." Ryan exhaled sharply. "Jacob found something about your dad's company, some shady deal he overheard. He called me that night, panicked. He said someone was following him." Ryan's eyes darkened. "That was the last time I ever spoke to him." Linda turned to me, her face pale. "Ethan, I need to hear it from him." We left the motel in silence. The drive home felt surreal, like I was floating outside my own body. My father, the man I had trusted my whole life, was now at the center of a mystery that had haunted Linda for years. When we got home, my dad was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee like it was just another night. Linda dropped the folder in front of him. "Explain this." His face barely changed, but I saw it. The flicker of recognition, the split second of hesitation. Then he sighed, setting his cup down. "I was hoping you'd never find out." Silence. My stomach twisted. "Dad, what did you do?" He looked at me then, his expression unreadable, and when he finally spoke, his voice was eerily calm. "I did what I had to do." Linda inhaled sharply, and in that moment, I realized, whatever truth we had uncovered, we weren't ready for it. And maybe we never would be.